In a world where fame is fleeting and criticism comes quickly, few have endured the spotlight with as much grace, honesty, and resilience as Kris Aquino. Born into one of the most powerful political dynasties in Philippine history, she could have simply lived in the shadow of her family's legacy. But instead, she chose to carve out her own path, on television screens, in film, in business, and in the hearts of millions. This is not just the story of a celebrity. This is the journey of a woman who faced loss, illness, heartbreak, and public scrutiny, yet stood tall through it all. Join us as we explore the full and deeply moving biography of Cristina Bernadette Coanco Aquino, the queen of all media, a devoted mother, a fearless fighter, and an enduring icon of the Filipino spirit. In the stillness of February 14, 1971, as the world celebrated Valentine's Day, a child destined for the public eye was born in Quezon City, Philippines. She was named Cristina Bernadette Coanco Aquino, but to the nation, she would become simply Kris, the queen of all media, an enduring symbol of resilience, charisma, and influence. From the very moment of her birth, Kris's life was unlike that of any other Filipino child. She was the youngest daughter of two political giants, Benigno and Ninoy Aquino Jr., a rising opposition leader, and Corazon Cory Aquino, who would later become the first female president of the Philippines. The blood of revolution, public service, and immense responsibility coursed through her veins even before she spoke her first words. Her earliest memories were steeped not in the playful innocence of childhood but in the heavy currents of national turmoil. The Philippines of the 1970s was a nation simmering under the weight of martial law, declared by President Ferdinand Marcos in 1972. As political dissent grew, so did the dangers surrounding Kris's family. Her father, a vocal critic of the regime, became a symbol of resistance than a target. Kris's early years unfolded in the heart of this political storm. She would later recall scenes most children are spared from: frequent visits from police officers, hushed conversations among adults, then whispered fears of arrest and disappearances. Even at a young age, she instinctively understood that her family's life was not private and that their struggles were deeply tied to the fate of the nation. When her father was arrested and imprisoned in 1972, Kris was barely a toddler. Photographs from that era show a beaming little girl clinging tightly to Ninoy during visiting hours at the military prison. She was the family's sunshine, her innocence a bomb against the gathering darkness. For much of her early childhood, her father's presence in her life was fragmented, allowed only through brief, supervised visits. Yet even in confinement, Ninoy ensured that his children, especially young Kris, understood the importance of hope, faith, and service to others. He wrote letters to them filled with lessons about courage, perseverance, and love for country. When Kris was around 8 years old, her father was allowed to go into exile in the United States for medical treatment after suffering a heart attack. The Aquino family relocated temporarily to Boston, Massachusetts, where Kris experienced a different kind of childhood, a taste of normalcy in a suburban American setting, away from the threats looming back home. It was during these formative years in Boston that Kris developed her quick wit, confident articulation, and fearless spirit. She attended elementary school there and excelled academically. Yet even as she thrived, her heart remained tied to the Philippines. In 1983, when Kris was just 12 years old, tragedy struck. Her father decided to return to the Philippines despite warnings that his life would be in danger. In a moment that seared itself into the nation's collective memory, Ninoy Aquino was assassinated upon arrival at the Manila International Airport. Kris, a child on the cusp of adolescence, was thrust onto the stage of public grief. As thousands mourned the fallen hero, she stood by her mother, absorbing the weight of unimaginable loss and public expectation. The world had taken away her father, but it would soon propel her mother to the highest office in the land and place Kris at the very heart of Philippine history. This early baptism of fire would shape Kris Aquino in profound ways, forging in her an unyielding resilience and an acute understanding of both the privileges and burdens of fame. The Aquino Cojuangco family was no ordinary clan. They were one of the Philippines' most prominent political and landowning families, their influence spanning decades and generations. Kris's father, Ibanino Ininoy Aquino Jr., was born into political royalty. He was a brilliant, eloquent young man who quickly rose through the ranks of public service, becoming the youngest mayor, governor, and senator of his time. Ninoy was widely viewed as the political heir to the presidency before Ferdinand Marcos tightened his grip on power. Yet, despite his dazzling trajectory, Ninoy remained grounded in principles of justice and democracy. His life was a testament to fearless dissent, even in the face of imprisonment and death. Kris's mother, Corazon Cory Cojuangco Aquino, came from the wealthy and influential Cojuangco family, whose fortunes were built on vast agricultural estates and business ventures. Cory, however, preferred a quiet, domestic life. She was a devout Catholic, a devoted mother to her 5 children, and, by all accounts, reluctant to enter the rough world of politics. Following Ninoy's assassination, Cory Aquino became the face of the opposition, leading a peaceful revolution that culminated in the People Power Revolution of 1986, toppling the Marcos dictatorship. She was inaugurated as the 11th president of the Philippines. Then Kris, still in her teens, found herself the daughter of the nation's leader. Growing up under the twin legacies of the Aquino and Cojuangco families meant that Kris was raised with immense privilege and equally immense expectations. She was educated in the finest schools, taught by private tutors when necessary, and imbued with a profound sense of duty to others. Her siblings, Boze, Pinky, Uvil, and Noynoy, who himself would later become President Benigno Aquino III, shared a close bond. Yet Kris, the youngest and most vibrant, often stood out. She was the family's baby, but also its most public face after her mother. The Aquino household was steeped in faith. Daily masses, evening rosaries, and strong moral teachings were routine. Despite their prominence, Cory worked hard to instill humility in her children. Kris, however, always had an innate flair for the dramatic, a vivacity that hinted at a future far beyond the somber halls of politics. In many ways, Kris was a bridge between two worlds, the solemnity of political service and the glitz of celebrity culture. She would eventually carve out a unique path, distinct from her family's political legacy, yet always tethered to its values of courage, compassion, and service. Education was a pillar in Kris Aquino's upbringing. Her parents, both staunch believers in the transformative power of learning, ensured that their children were given every academic opportunity available. Kris began her primary education in Boston during the Aquino family's exile in the United States. There, she attended Newton Country Day School of the Sacred Heart, an elite Catholic all-girls school known for its rigorous academics and emphasis on leadership and service. Kris thrived in this environment, developing her love for literature, drama, and public speaking. Returning to the Philippines after her father's death, Kris continued her education at Poveda Learning Center in Quezon City, one of the most prestigious girls' schools in the country. Her time at Poveda was marked by academic excellence and active participation in extracurricular activities, particularly those that involved public speaking, debate, and performance arts. As she transitioned into high school, Kris transferred to the Colegio San Agustin in Makati City, where she continued to excel. Despite the immense public attention she received as the daughter of the sitting president, she managed to maintain a relatively normal school life. Teachers and classmates alike noted her intelligence, charm, and natural leadership qualities. After completing her secondary education, Kris pursued her college degree at the College of the Holy Spirit Manila, taking up a Bachelor of Arts major in English Literature. Her choice of major reflected her enduring love for storytelling, communication, and the arts, a love that would soon blossom into a groundbreaking career in Philippine media. Throughout her academic journey, Kris demonstrated a remarkable ability to balance the pressures of public life with her personal ambitions. She was a diligent student, determined to honor her parents' legacy of excellence while also forging her own identity. Education, for Kris Aquino, was not merely a stepping stone to fame. It was a grounding force, the source of discipline, critical thinking, and resilience that would serve her well in the tumultuous years to come. As the late 1980s unfolded, the Philippines found itself rebuilding from the scars of dictatorship. The political landscape was transforming, and with it, the new generation of public figures began to emerge, figures who could inspire, entertain, and bring a sense of normalcy to a nation yearning for hope. Amidst this backdrop, Kris Aquino, daughter of democracy's icon, took her first steps into the world of public life, not as a politician, as many had expected, but as an entertainer. Kris's entry into show business was not initially met with unanimous approval within her family. Her mother, President Kris Aquino, was protective, cautious about the path her youngest daughter was choosing. Public life had already taken much from their family. But Kris, with her characteristic mix of determination and charm, gently persuaded her mother that she could carve out her own identity, one rooted in authenticity and creativity. In 1986, barely 15 years old, Kris made her television debut by appearing in a political commercial supporting her mother's presidency during the People Power Revolution. Her poised manner, articulate speech, and relatable presence captivated viewers even then. Her official foray into the entertainment industry began shortly after Kris's presidency ended in 1992. Free from the constraints of being the president's daughter, Kris was finally able to pursue her passion fully. She debuted on the big screen with the film El Pido Daida, Sobay Teyo, 1990, opposite comedian Rene Requiestas. Though initially perceived as a risky move for a political scion, the film turned into a massive box office success. Audiences were charmed by Kris's comedic timing, natural screen presence, and refreshing authenticity. The movie's popularity was so profound that it cemented Kris as a legitimate celebrity in her own right, separate from her family's political legacy. Following this breakthrough, she signed with Viva Films, one of the country's leading production houses at the time, setting the stage for a prolific career in movies, television, and endorsements. Her early films showcased her versatility from romantic comedies to dramas, then eventually to horror movies where she would become known as the Philippines horror queen. Her connection with the audience was immediate and electric. But more than just a performer, Kris was already demonstrating the qualities that would define her career: relentless professionalism, a deep understanding of the audience's pulse, and an intuitive grasp of media dynamics. Even in these early days, it was clear Kris Aquino was not merely a star. She was a force in the making. Kris Aquino's rise to superstardom in the Philippines was meteoric yet meticulously earned. Unlike many celebrities who relied solely on talent agents and producers to shape their careers, Kris was an active architect of her own brand. Throughout the 1990s and early 2000s, Kris diversified her career, embracing roles as an actress, television host, commercial model, and later, entrepreneur. In cinema, she starred in a string of successful films, including Shake, Rattle and Roll 3, 1991, where she began to solidify her reputation as a scream queen. The Fatima Bune story, 1994, based on a real-life controversial case, showing her ability to tackle more serious, dramatic roles. Feng Shui, 2004, a horror film that became a massive commercial hit and revived the horror genre in Philippine cinema. But it was on television where Kris Aquino truly became a household name. She pioneered a new kind of talk show format that combined celebrity interviews, lifestyle segments, and emotional confessions. Programs such as Kris, 1994. Today with Kris Aquino, 1996 to 2001. Morning Girls with Kris and Corina, 2002 to 2004. The Buzz, a co-host, 1999 onwards. These shows highlighted Kris's natural conversational skills. She had a unique ability to draw out candid, heartfelt moments from her guests. Her charm lay in her disarming honesty. She could be glamorous one moment, self-deprecating the next. She was not afraid to show her vulnerability, and audiences loved her for it. By the early 2000s, Kris Aquino had become a multi-platform phenomenon. She endorsed countless brands, from fast food chains to luxury products, earning her the unofficial title of the Queen of all media. She was omnipresent, her face and voice a daily part of Filipino life. Endorsements were not mere vanity projects for Kris. She was one of the first celebrities in the Philippines to professionalize branding partnerships, understanding that her credibility and influence could translate directly into consumer trust. Her marketing instinct was razor-sharp, foreshadowing the influencer culture that would dominate decades later. In addition to her showbiz success, Kris also began investing in businesses. She launched her own production company, Kris Aquino Productions, which allowed her greater creative control and a larger share of profits, a pioneering move at a time when celebrities were often simply hired talent. At her peak, Kris was not merely famous, she was influential, trusted, and loved by millions. Her name became synonymous with quality endorsements, compelling storytelling, and unfiltered truth. Yet with great fame came intense scrutiny, and Kris Aquino would soon discover that her life, in all its glittering triumphs and painful struggles, would play out on air. Throughout her career, Kris Aquino accumulated a dazzling array of achievements that spanned multiple industries. Her versatility and relentless work ethic propelled her to heights few in Philippine entertainment have ever reached. Box office queen, Kris became known as one of the few actresses who could consistently deliver box office hits, especially in the horror genre. Feng Shui, 2004, broke box office records for Filipino horror films at the time, grossing over 137 million Cuban pesos, the remarkable achievement. Sucub, 2006, another horror masterpiece starring Kris, would surpass Feng Shui, becoming one of the highest-grossing Filipino films ever, earning over 186 million Cuban pesos domestically. Her success in the horror genre earned her the moniker a box office horror queen of Philippine cinema. Kris anchored and hosted some of the longest-running and highest-rated talk shows in Philippine TV history. The Buzz and Kris TV became platforms where she not only entertained but also influenced national conversations, from entertainment gossip to social issues. Her hosting style, blending glamour with relatability, reshaped the way talk shows were done in the country. Kris Aquino was the top celebrity endorser for years, with contracts for dozens of brands at any given time. She was instrumental in boosting sales for brands like Chowking, Pantene, PLDT, San Miguel, and many others. In 2015 alone, she was estimated to have earned over 200 million Cuban pesos from endorsements. She ventured into entrepreneurship with businesses in food, production, and media content creation. Kris used her platform to campaign for her brother, Benigno and Noynoy Aquino III, during his successful presidential bid in 2010. Her immense popularity and media savvy contributed significantly to Noynoy's victory. She continued to use her influence for social causes, charity drives, and humanitarian campaigns. At every step, Kris Aquino proved that she was more than just a celebrity. She was a brand, the businesswoman, the cultural icon, and an institution in Philippine media. Her rise was not accidental, it was built through decades of dedication, reinvention, and a deep understanding of the public she served. And yet, even as she reached the zenith of success, Kris's journey was far from easy. Life would test her in ways few could imagine. To the world, Kris Aquino was the queen of all media, a dazzling star whose presence illuminated every platform she touched. But behind the glamour, the awards, and the flashing lights, she was also a daughter, a sister, a mother, and a woman fiercely protective of her loved ones. Family had always been the bedrock of Kris's identity. Raised in the immense shadow of her father's martyrdom and her mother's presidency, Kris carried her family's legacy like a precious but heavy crown. Loyalty was not a casual word for Kris, it was her lifeblood. In 1995, Kris gave birth to her first son, Joshua Philip Salvador, with actor Philip Salvador. The birth of Joshua marked a monumental shift in Kris's life. Suddenly, her world was not just about shows and endorsements, it revolved around a fragile life she had vowed to protect at all costs. Raising Joshua, who would later be diagnosed with autism, became both Kris's greatest joy and her fiercest battle. She shielded him from public scrutiny while simultaneously advocating for greater awareness about special needs children. In a society often slow to accept differences, Kris's openness about Joshua's condition helped break barriers and reduce stigma. Years later, in 2007, Kris welcomed her second son, James Carlos Bimbi Aquino Yap Jr., during her marriage to James Yap, a famous basketball superstar in the Philippine Basketball Association, PBA. Their relationship was highly publicized, and for a time, they represented the image of a modern Filipino power couple, glamorous, successful, and admired. However, as in many aspects of Kris's life, personal happiness did not come without challenges. After 4 years of marriage, Kris and James separated in 2010, citing irreconcilable differences. Their split played out painfully in the public eye, subjecting Kris to media scrutiny and criticism. Yet through it all, Kris remained resilient. She was determined to raise her sons with dignity, compassion, and the strong moral compass instilled in her by her parents. She once said, "I may fail in love, but I will never fail as a mother." Her relationship with her sons, Joshua and Bimbi, became the cornerstone of her existence. They were, and remain, her anchor amidst the storms of public life, friendships, and inner circle. Over the years, Kris cultivated deep, enduring friendships with a select few whom she trusted implicitly. She often referred to her close friends as her chosen family, emphasizing loyalty, kindness, and honesty as the pillars of her inner circle. Though sometimes portrayed as guarded or sensitive in the media, those who knew Kris personally spoke of her generosity, her thoughtfulness, and her willingness to go above and beyond for the people she loved. It is often said that the brightest stars attract not only admiration but also controversy, and Kris Aquino's life was no exception. Throughout her career, Kris faced an almost relentless cycle of personal trials, media storms, and public criticisms. Yet, each challenge revealed the depth of her resilience, grace, and capacity for reinvention. Kris's romantic relationships were among the most publicized aspects of her life. Her relationships with actor Joey Marquez and basketball player James Yap, among others, were heavily covered by tabloids and news programs alike. Breakups, reconciliations, then custody battles were dissected in real time by a public that seemed to alternate between adoring and judging her. Perhaps the most infamous of these was her highly publicized conflict with Joey Marquez in 2003, which involved accusations of infidelity and personal betrayals. The scandal was splashed across every major newspaper and television station in the country. In response, Kris did not retreat. Instead, she addressed the issue openly in a televised interview, acknowledging her pain and reaffirming her commitment to her son. It was a stunning act of vulnerability, one that humanized her and, paradoxically, strengthened her connection with the Filipino people. "I cannot hide behind a script or a director," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I am living my life honestly and openly." Even within her own family, Kris occasionally found herself at the center of controversies. After the death of her mother, Kris Aquino, in 2009, and later her brother, President Noynoy Aquino, in 2021, tensions over family matters, particularly financial and estate issues, surfaced. Although these disputes were largely private, occasional glimpses leaked into the public domain, painting Kris as a protective but sometimes polarizing figure within the Aquino clan. Perhaps one of the most significant battles Kris faced came not from external controversies, but from within her own body. In 2018, she revealed that she had been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease known as chronic spontaneous urticaria, a debilitating condition that caused her body to react severely to various stimuli. Her health battles intensified over the years. By 2021, Kris announced that she was battling multiple autoimmune diseases, including eosinophilic granulomatosis with polyangiitis (EGPA), an extremely rare and potentially life-threatening condition. As her health declined, Kris withdrew from the public eye, focusing entirely on her treatments and her sons. She bravely shared updates with her supporters, often posting photos from hospital rooms and clinics, reminding everyone that even queens bleed and even stars dim sometimes. Her honesty about her illness was groundbreaking in a culture that often stigmatizes weakness. Once again, Kris was forging a new path, not by projecting invincibility, but by embodying courage through vulnerability. Beyond her glittering career and public persona, Kris Aquino dedicated substantial energy to philanthropy, a dimension of her life that was deeply influenced by her family's commitment to public service. From a young age, Kris had been taught that privilege came with responsibility. Watching her mother advocate for democracy and her father die for it instilled in her a profound sense of duty toward the less fortunate. Throughout her career, Kris supported numerous charitable causes, often quietly and without fanfare. Support for autism awareness. Inspired by her son Joshua's condition, Kris became a vocal advocate for autism awareness and inclusion, supporting foundations and charities dedicated to helping children with special needs. Disaster relief. After major calamities, such as Typhoon Haiyan, Yolanda, in 2013, Kris donated generously, both financially and through mobilizing public awareness. Medical aid. Kris regularly contributed to fundraising campaigns for sick children needing surgery or treatments, often paying hospital bills anonymously. Scholarships and education. In honor of her father's love for education, Kris quietly sponsored scholarships for underprivileged students, believing that education was the greatest equalizer. When her brother Noinoi became president, Kris supported government-led initiatives aimed at poverty alleviation, although she was careful not to overstep into political functions, respecting the boundary between her celebrity platform and her brother's political career. In every act of giving, Kris honored the legacy of service and compassion that her family embodied. For her, charity was not about photo opportunities, it was about dignity, hope, and human connection. Throughout her decades-long career, Kris Aquino garnered an extraordinary array of awards, honors, and recognitions, each a testament not only to her talent but also to her enduring impact on Philippine culture and media. Her rise to superstardom was marked by both critical acclaim and commercial success, a rare combination achieved by only a handful of Filipino entertainers. Best Supporting Actress, Metro Manila Film Festival, MMFF, for her riveting role in Mano Pop 2002, where she portrayed a strong yet vulnerable character in the celebrated Chinese-Filipino drama. Best Actress nomination, Farmers Awards, for Feng Shui, 2004, a groundbreaking horror film that became a landmark in Philippine cinema history. Box Office Queen Award multiple times, recognizing her ability to consistently deliver hit films, especially during the mid-2000s when she starred in box office successes like Feng Shui and Sukob. PMPC Star Awards for TV, for her hosting excellence in shows like Today with Kris Aquino, The Buzz, Kris TV, and Game KNB. Her extraordinary versatility across genres, from horror to drama, from talk shows to game shows, earned her the unofficial but widely accepted title of Queen of All Media. Kris did not just host shows, she transformed them into cultural events. Programs under her banner were always infused with her signature charisma, candor, and intelligence. Beyond film and television, Kris became the most sought-after commercial endorser in the country. At her peak, she endorsed more than 50 brands, ranging from fast food and banking to beauty products and appliances. Her influence was so profound that companies reported massive surges in sales shortly after Kris signed on as their ambassador. In 2010, she was officially recognized as the Philippines' Endorsement Queen, a title reflecting her unmatched credibility with the public. Anak TV Seal Awards, for being one of the most child-friendly television personalities, showing that despite controversies, Kris maintained a clean and wholesome image when it came to family values on screen. Philippine Movie Press Club, PMPC, a Lifetime Achievement Awards, acknowledging her contribution to shaping modern Philippine media and entertainment. Influential Women Awards for her business ventures, humanitarian work, and role in championing women's empowerment through her career and public engagements. As the 2010s progressed, a different Kris Aquino began to emerge, one no longer solely defined by her television shows, her box office hits, or even her endorsement empire. This was Kris Aquino, the survivor. The warrior. The mother fighting a battle far greater than ratings or public perception, the battle for her health and life. After leaving her longtime home network, ABS-CBN, in 2016, Kris sought to redefine her career on her own terms. She launched Kris Aquino Productions, KCAP, focusing on digital media. She successfully transitioned into becoming a social media powerhouse, amassing millions of followers on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Her content, candid, funny, heartwarming, showed a more unfiltered version of herself, resonating deeply with fans across generations. However, as she leaned into this new chapter, Kris faced mounting health concerns that would eventually force her to step back from even digital engagements. In 2018, Kris publicly revealed she had been diagnosed with chronic spontaneous urticaria, an autoimmune disorder that caused severe allergic reactions. What began as manageable episodes soon escalated into life-threatening complications. By 2021, Kris was battling multiple autoimmune conditions simultaneously, including the rare and dangerous eosinophilic granulomatosis with polyangiitis, EGPA. With her health deteriorating, she made the difficult decision to seek advanced treatment abroad. In 2022, Kris and her sons moved temporarily to the United States, where she underwent aggressive medical treatments. Updates from Kris during this period were both heartbreaking and inspiring. Photos of her frail body, candid admissions of fear, and heartfelt gratitude for prayers flooded her social media channels. Yet, even amid the suffering, Kris's spirit never broke. As the sun began to set on Kris Aquino's public life, her legacy shone brighter than ever, a legacy woven from brilliance, bravery, love, and an unwavering commitment to authenticity. Kris changed the definition of a Filipino celebrity. She showed that vulnerability was not weakness but strength, that candor, honesty, and imperfection could endear someone even more to the public. She built a career not merely on talent but on a willingness to show her real self, flaws, heartbreaks, triumphs, and all. Through her openness about Joshua's condition and her own mental health struggles, Kris helped normalize discussions about autism, depression, anxiety, and chronic illness in Filipino society. She gave voice to the often invisible struggles faced by millions. If Kris's life teaches anything, it is that resilience is not about pretending to be unbreakable. It is about being broken, bruised, scarred, and still choosing to move forward. She modeled this for an entire nation, inspiring countless people to confront their own battles with courage. Through service, advocacy, and example, Kris upheld the values her parents fought so hard for. Compassion for the marginalized. Integrity in public life. Love of country. Faith in the Filipino spirit. Even without holding public office, Kris Aquino served her nation in the most personal way possible by being a symbol of survival, perseverance, and hope. The life of Christina Bernadette Coanco Aquino is not easily summarized in mere headlines or news clippings. It is a sweeping, epic journey marked by dizzying heights and devastating lows. It is the story of a girl born into power who carved out her own name, of a woman who lived her life under the brightest and harshest of lights, and of a mother who made every sacrifice for the love of her sons. It is the story of grace under pressure, strength through suffering, then triumph through love. And when future generations look back, they will not just see a superstar, a media queen, or an heiress. They will see Kris Aquino, the woman who dared to live honestly, to love fiercely, and to fight bravely. A woman who, in every sense, became a true icon of the Filipino spirit.